Hey everyone, and welcome back to Beach.com. I'm James, head of social media.
I'm Tara, content coordinator, and today we're talking about Day of the Dead in Mexico. A lot of people seem to think that Day of the Dead is kind of like the Mexican version of Halloween, so we're here to tell you all about Day of the Dead and what it really is.
So Day of the Dead is a celebration of life and the welcoming back of the dead every October 31st and November 2nd. Traditionally in Mexico, death is not feared nor seen as the end, but more or less a cycle of life. The belief is that the dead can awaken during these days, and they're actually guided back by the candles and the smell of marigolds that the families leave out, and they're guided back to their families where they can enjoy offerings and quality time with the living.
So the way it works is starting the evening or late in the night on October 31st, it's believed that that's Day of the Little Angels or Day of the Innocents. And that night and then the following day, November 1st, is when the spirits of children come back. So November 1st, they focus on spirits of small children, and they set up ofrendas or altars with offerings with the children and child's favorite toys, maybe their favorite snacks, favorite drinks. And this is when you're gonna see those little sugar skulls. For small children, they use little ones, and often the name is written across the forehead. And then the following day is known as Day of the Dead, and that is when adults are thought to come back, and you'll see the same kind of celebrations and offerings, and on their altars there will be larger sugar skulls or calaveras, and they will have the name across the forehead.
So Day of the Dead goes way back, almost 3,000 years, and scholars believe that it started with the Aztecs' month-long summer celebration where they worship the goddess of the underworld. And they also believe that death shouldn't be like something to be sorrowful over, and that would actually be disrespectful, but it's more or less a part of the life cycle, so it should be celebrated.
So when the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they came from a Catholic background, and they came to Mexico, and they felt that the natives' rituals were sacrilegious. So over hundreds of years, the Spanish realized that a lot of these traditions weren't going away, and eventually they made it so that they coincided with the minor holidays on the Catholic calendar, All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. So the summer festival was moved to those dates, which is what is now the Day of the Dead.
Let's talk about the history of La Calavera, Catrina, and sugar skulls. It all started in 1910 with Jose Guadalupe Posada, known as Mexico's father of printmaking. Posada grew up during Porfirio Diaz's presidency in Mexico. He first featured this elegant lady of death in the leaflet La Calavera Garbancera, highlighting the corruption and stark contrast between the very wealthy and starving poor, while also showing, especially by the fancy hat, that death doesn't discriminate beyond class. Mexico's Dame of Death was understandable to Mexicans of every social-economic status, and came just as the Mexican Revolution that would eventually topple Porfirio was gaining speed.
But that's not the end of La Catrina's legacy. In 1947, Diego Rivera brought La Catrina back to life, this time with a full form.
Day of the Dead and Halloween may land on the same day of the year, but they couldn't be more different. Halloween tends to be a little more creepy, where people think of spirits as evil, and Day of the Dead, people tend to celebrate death and actually invite the spirits back to celebrate with them. It's hard to imagine gathering in a cemetery for the evening as merry, but that's exactly how it is in Mexico. It's a time Mexican families visit with family and friends and see everyone from town while sharing food and drinks and reminiscing about when the dead were alive. When in Mexico for Day of the Dead, you'll notice even depictions of skeletons are celebrating. Dressed up, getting married, dancing, drinking, and playing instruments.
So we know the Day of the Dead comes from the ancient Aztec summer festival celebrating the goddess of the underworld. Where does Halloween come from, and how do they differ? Halloween comes from very different roots. It comes from the early Celtic festival. It was a pagan festival known as Samhain, and it celebrated the end of their harvest season and the Celtic New Year. They believe that on this special night of the year, the border between the realms of life and death diminished, and the spirits could explore the land of the living. Sounds pretty similar to Day of the Dead, huh? Except when the Catholics came along, they once again tried to squash this tradition, meshing Samhain with All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, which is how Halloween came to share the same exact holiday. This new festival was commonly known as All Hallows, with the night before known as All Hallows' Eve, which eventually became Halloween. Many of the Halloween traditions in the United States and around the world today come from this original Samhain festival, including things like costumes, trick-or-treating, and bobbing for apples. It's believed costumes were worn to hide from spirits walking the earth, and even disguise yourself as a spirit so the spirits wouldn't harm or bother you. Clearly, in Halloween, they do not see the spirits as friendly and jovial and welcome their return. They're hiding from them, they're seen as evil spirits, and people would even leave food, which is where trick-or-treating came from, out on their front porches in hopes that the spirits would be satisfied and not come in their homes and bother them.
So let's go ahead and hop into the traditions of Day of the Dead. So there are two sides to Day of the Dead. One is the more publicly known side, which is largely influenced by pop culture in modern times, and then there's a more traditional style.
So as James said, in big cities like Mexico City or even in downtown Cancun, you're gonna see Day of the Dead parades, everyone has their faces painted, Katrina contests, and live music, everyone's really in the mood. But if you go to maybe a smaller town that doesn't have such big festivities, you're gonna see more just solemn vigils. It's not gonna be so much of a party, but it's gonna be more of a time to gather with family and reminisce about your loved ones that are no longer with you. However, across the board, while things differ from which area of Mexico you're in or even which Latin American country you're in, a few traditions are celebrated widely. And one of those is setting up an altar, also known as an ofrenda, but an ofrenda really means offering. And these altars are set up with one person in mind, and they place a photo of the individual on the altar, they fill it with the individual's favorite foods, drinks, even their favorite sports jersey from when they were living, and then they put all kinds of traditional foods like pan de muerto, food of the dead, or even their favorite alcohol, or maybe mole negro, which takes a really long time to make, but this time of year is so special that everyone goes out of their way for preparing the most elaborate dishes. So earlier we touched on how the spirits find their family. And when you're in Mexico for Day of the Dead, you'll notice thousands and trillions of orange and yellow marigolds lining the streets, lining on the ground, decorating all the altars, decorating everywhere you can see, because it's believed that these flowers have the scent of death and they guide the dead to their altars. Little gruesome, but so these flowers are said to attract the dead, and sometimes there's full pathways from where the family will start, maybe at the entrance of the house, all the way to the altar so that the dead spirit can make it there. Another item that's commonly found on altars, we touched on it earlier with La Calavera Catrina, is the modern day sugar skull, which nowadays they're still frequently made out of sugar, but you don't really traditionally eat them. They're often decorated with ribbons, icing, glitter, anything you want, and usually the deceased's name is written across the forehead of the sugar skull and placed on the altar. Like we said, small ones for children, larger ones for adults, but you will see sugar skull designs everywhere. You'll see it in the papel picado that decorates all the streets. You'll see chocolate sugar skulls and those ones you can eat. You'll see it everywhere. And something that you're most familiar with probably from the pop culture side is the sugar skull or Katrina contests. And in big cities and even small towns, they have Katrina contests for whoever has the best face paint and the best outfit overall, maybe the best hat decorated with flowers or the best flower crown. So if you want to partake in the holiday, you can have your face painted somewhere in Mexico, you can do your makeup yourself with a tutorial from YouTube or Pinterest, or you can dress up as someone that you really miss and would love to remember.
So I hope this video was really helpful for you guys, and now you have a little more clarification, the differences between Day of the Dead and Halloween.
But if you do want to know more, we have a ton of articles on beach.com all about celebrating Day of the Dead in Mexico.
Also, a little fun fact, and I want to see if you guys can get it right. Let me know in the comments.
The question is, what Hollywood movie is responsible for the modern day parade and celebrations that Mexico City has every year now? Leave the comments below.
Let us know. And if you really want to know if your answer is right, go to our website and check out our blog. I'll leave the link in the video description. Alright everyone, we'll see you in the next video. I'm James.
I'm Tara, and we hope to see you on the beach.